When I tell people this story, most don't even believe me at first. They think I'm exaggerating or leaving something out, because who the hell does this to their own kid? But this is my life. I lived it. And I swear on everything, I couldn't make this up even if I tried. So yeah, when my son was born, I wasn't even allowed to hold him properly. My mom literally took him out of my arms in the hospital and handed him to my sister like she was passing along some borrowed sweater. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You don't look like a real mother. She'll raise him better." That sentence has been stuck in my skull ever since, like it's carved in stone. My dad stood right there too, arms crossed, face all smug, and added, "We're protecting the child from your weakness." I don't even know what weakness he meant. Was it because I was young? Because I didn't have everything figured out yet? Because I wasn't their golden child like my sister? Maybe all of the above. But in that moment, fresh out of labor, exhausted, stitched up, bleeding, barely able to think straight, I felt like they stole my entire existence right out of my hands. And it wasn't like this came out of nowhere either. My parents had always been like this, controlling, judgmental, treating me like I was some screw-up no matter what I did. My sister, meanwhile, could literally set the house on fire, and they'd probably blame me for not handing her the matches properly. She's 2 years older than me, always the perfect one, the one with good grades, the bright future. I was just the background character in my own family. So when I got pregnant, they didn't even try to hide their disappointment. My mom flat out told me at the dinner table, "Don't expect us to babysit your mistakes." My dad didn't talk to me for weeks. My sister acted all sympathetic, like she was being supportive, but I could feel that weird energy from her, the kind where she's low-key happy because it makes her look even better in their eyes. But I was determined. I told myself I didn't need their approval. I'd raise my kid, work my ass off, and give him a life worth living. I thought once they saw him, they'd soften up, maybe finally see me as capable. God, was I stupid. Because the second he was born, they swooped in like vultures. My mom acted like she was the one who carried him for 9 months. She started calling him our miracle grandson, like she had been in the trenches with me. My sister? She took the role of mom like it was a game she'd been preparing for all her life. She posted pictures of him on Facebook, holding him like he was hers, captioning them with dumb shit like, "So blessed." People actually thought he was her baby for a while. And instead of correcting them, she let them believe it. And me? I was shoved aside. At family gatherings, they literally sat me at the kids' table while parading my own son around like he was a show pony. I'd hear people whisper, "Oh, isn't it so nice that her sister stepped up to help?" Like I was some deadbeat who couldn't even manage her own child. I tried to push back, but every time I opened my mouth, my mom would shoot me that look, the one that basically said, "Shut up before you embarrass yourself further." The lowest point? My son's first steps. He was wobbly, unsteady, but he turned and walked straight toward me, his real mom. And for 1 second, I felt this flood of pride like nothing I'd ever known. But before I could even scoop him up, my mom hissed in my ear, "Don't confuse him, you'll only ruin his life." Like me being loved by my own kid was somehow dangerous. That night, I broke. I went back to the little room they'd stuck me in, the one that used to be mine before they redecorated it for my sister, like she was the queen of the house, and I cried harder than I think I ever have. I knew then that if I didn't do something, my son was going to grow up thinking my sister was his mom, and I was just some extra character in the background. And I couldn't let that happen. So I packed our bags. I didn't even have a plan, just a couple changes of clothes, diapers, and whatever little cash I had saved from my part-time job. I waited until everyone was asleep, heart pounding so hard I thought it might wake the whole house. I strapped my baby to my chest, grabbed the bag, and walked out the door. By the time they realized we were gone, it was too late. He already knew who his real mother was. Walking out that night, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the whole damn world. My son was strapped against me, tiny breaths warm on my chest, and I just kept whispering to him, "It's you and me now, buddy. Just us." I don't even know if I was saying it for him or myself. Probably both. I didn't have a car. My parents never let me get one. They always said I didn't need the responsibility. So I walked, bag digging into my shoulder, until I got to the bus station. The overnight bus wasn't glamorous. It smelled like stale fries and someone's cheap cologne, and I swear every seat had crumbs on it, but when I sat down and clutched my son, it felt like freedom for the first time in years. I had maybe $200 total. Not exactly new life money. But I wasn't about to crawl back, not after everything. I texted my best friend from high school, Jess. We hadn't talked in a while, mostly because my parents hated her and made it a whole thing anytime I wanted to hang out. But she answered right away. She said, "Where are you? Come here. We'll figure it out." I cried again when I read that. Actual ugly tears right there on the bus. Because someone finally chose me. Jess lived in this small apartment above a laundromat, not fancy, but it was warm and hers. When I got there, she didn't even ask for details. She just opened the door, saw me holding my son, and pulled us both into the tightest hug. That first night, I slept on her couch, clutching him like if I let go, someone would rip him away again. Of course, my phone blew up. First, calls from my mom. Then my dad. Then my sister. When I didn't answer, they switched to text. Mom started with guilt. "You're being irrational. You're hurting the baby. Come home." Dad added threats. "You think you can raise him alone? You'll come crawling back when you fail." And my sister, God, hers made me sick. She wrote, "You're making this harder than it has to be. He's happy here. Just let me take care of him." Like she thought I'd just hand him over. Like I hadn't carried him, birthed him, stayed up all night with him when he cried. Like I was just some incubator who got in the way. I blocked them all. It felt like cutting off an oxygen tube, but also like the first deep breath I'd ever taken. Those first weeks at Jess's place were brutal. Money drained fast. Diapers, formula, bus fare. It ate through what little I had. I picked up shifts at a diner a few blocks away, working evenings while Jess's roommate watched my son. I hated leaving him, but I knew if I didn't work, we wouldn't survive. There were nights I came home dead on my feet, smelling like grease and burnt coffee, but when I saw him sleeping peacefully, I reminded myself it was worth it. Meanwhile, my parents weren't giving up. They showed up at the diner once. I was in the middle of taking an order when I saw my mom's reflection in the window. My stomach dropped. She marched in like she owned the place, my dad right behind her. My mom tried to pull me aside, whispering harshly, "This isn't a game. You're embarrassing us. The child needs stability." I didn't even look at her. I just kept taking the customer's order. My hands were shaking so bad I spilled water all over the table, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. When I finally told them to leave, my dad said loud enough for the whole diner to hear, "Don't come running to us when you're broke and homeless." The worst part? For a split second, I almost believed him. But then I went home, held my son, and thought no. I'd rather be broke on the floor of Jess's apartment than rich under their roof if it meant my son thought someone else was his mom. Things slowly started falling into place. The diner boss liked me, said I was a hard worker, and gave me more hours. Jess helped me apply for assistance programs. I swallowed my pride and went to WIC, food stamps, anything that kept my kid fed. I hated the look sometimes, the judgment from strangers, but I reminded myself those people didn't know my story. They didn't know I was fighting tooth and nail just to give my kid what he deserved. But my family didn't back off. Not completely. I heard from mutual relatives that they kept parading my son's old baby pictures around, still spinning the lie that my sister was basically raising him. They painted me like some unstable runaway who abandoned her responsibilities. The audacity of it. I can't even explain the rage. But I bit my tongue, because I knew the only proof I needed was the little boy who lit up every time he saw me walk through the door. The breaking point came a couple months later when I got a letter in the mail. Legal looking. My hands shook opening it. It was a notice that my parents had filed for custody. They were actually trying to take my son away, claiming I was unfit, that I had no stable home, that my sister had been the primary caregiver. Reading that, I swear I couldn't breathe. For a full minute, I just sat on Jess's couch, staring at the paper while my son babbled on the floor with his toy truck. It felt like the walls were closing in, like all the progress I'd made meant nothing because they could still swoop in and erase me with a signature. But then I looked at him, his little hands, his messy hair, the way he looked up at me with this smile like I was his entire world, and I knew I wasn't going to let them win. If they wanted a fight, they were about to get one. I never thought I'd be the type of person to end up in a courtroom, fighting my own family over my own child. But life doesn't care about what you think you're built for, it just throws you into the ring and says, figure it out. The custody papers wrecked me at first. I had this moment of total panic where I was like, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm too young, too broke, too whatever. My parents had money, connections, a house with a yard. I had a couch in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. But then I looked at my son, who'd started crawling by then, and realized he didn't care about money or status. He cared about love. He cared about me. And I wasn't about to let anyone take that from either of us. So I scraped up what little savings I had and found a lawyer. Cheapest one I could get. This guy, Mr. Lawson, had a tiny office that smelled like old coffee and printer ink, but he listened. Really listened. I laid it all out. How they'd taken my baby from me at the hospital, how they paraded him around like he wasn't mine, how they shoved me at the kids' table like I didn't matter. He didn't look shocked. He just nodded and said, "You've got a case. It won't be easy, but you're his mother." That still means something in the eyes of the court. Court dates are their own special kind of hell. Sitting across from my parents and my sister, people I grew up with, people who were supposed to protect me, and realizing they were the enemy now, it's surreal. My mom came in dressed like she was running for office, pearls and all, with this smug air like she'd already won. My dad sat stiff, jaw tight, radiating that my way or the highway energy he'd always had. And my sister? She held a folder full of baby pictures like they were her smoking gun. Their lawyer wasted no time tearing into me. He painted me as unstable, financially irresponsible, emotionally immature. He even said, "The child has bonded more strongly with the maternal aunt, who has provided primary care since birth." I wanted to stand up and scream that it wasn't true, that they stole those moments from me. But I just sat there, hands gripping the table, nails digging into my palms so I wouldn't break down in front of them. When it was my turn, my lawyer asked me simple questions. Do you love your son? Have you provided for him since you left your parents' home? Do you have a safe environment for him? My voice shook, but I answered honestly. I told the judge about the diner, about the late nights, about Jess helping me. I told them about the first time he crawled across the floor to reach me, about how his face lights up when I pick him up after work. I didn't have money or status, but I had love, and I hoped to God that was enough. The worst part was when my sister took the stand. She talked about how she'd been there from day one, how she stepped up when her sister couldn't handle the pressure. She made it sound noble, like she'd rescued him from me. And the whole time, my mom was nodding proudly, like her plan was finally coming together. I almost lost it then. Almost screamed across the courtroom, "He's not your kid." But then, as if on cue, my son, who Jess was holding in the back, let out this little laugh. Just a baby giggle, nothing special. But he turned his head straight toward me when he did it. And the judge noticed. Everyone noticed. My mom stiffened, my sister's voice faltered, and I just sat there, tears threatening to spill, knowing that no matter what they said, the bond between us was undeniable. The case dragged for weeks. Every day felt like another battle. My parents pulled out every trick in the book, character witnesses, financial records, even a damn pediatrician who claimed stability is more important than biology. But my lawyer kept reminding the court, I was his mother. I'd been there every single day since leaving their house, and slowly, I could feel the tide turning. Then came the home visit. A court-appointed social worker came to Jess's apartment to check things out. I scrubbed that place top to bottom like it was the White House. Jess helped me borrow a crib from a neighbor, set up a little corner with toys, hung some dollar store wall decals to make it look cheerful. I was terrified they'd take one look and say it wasn't good enough. But the social worker surprised me. She sat on the floor with my son, asked me about our routine, listened without judgment. At the end, she smiled and said, "He's happy." That's what matters. I cried the second she left, clutching him so hard he squealed. When the final hearing came, I was shaking so bad I thought I might collapse. The judge went through all the arguments, all the evidence, all the noise my parents had created. And then she said, clear as day, custody is awarded to the mother. I don't think I've ever felt relief like that. My knees almost gave out. My mom gasped like she'd just witnessed a crime. My dad muttered something under his breath about the system being broken. My sister stormed out before it was even over. But me? I just held my son, kissed the top of his head, and whispered, "We did it." That should have been the end, right? But with my family, nothing is ever that simple. Winning custody should have felt like the end of the war. And for a little while, it did. I remember walking out of that courthouse with my son in my arms, feeling like I could finally breathe again. No more lawyers, no more hearings, no more wondering if someone was going to snatch him from me in the middle of the night. It felt like we were free. But the thing about my parents? They don't know how to lose. They don't know how to just accept reality and move on. They turned it into a vendetta. At first, it was subtle. They'd accidentally show up at the diner while I was working, trying to slide into a booth and act like customers. My mom would wave at me with this fake smile, then glare at the girl who was watching my son in the corner. She'd make comments like, "Oh, poor thing, having to sit in a noisy diner instead of a proper home." My dad would complain loudly about the food, like it was my fault, and leave a dollar tip as some twisted power play. Then came the family drama. Cousins, aunts, random relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly checking in. At first, I thought maybe they were actually trying to support me, but no, it was always the same script. You know your mom just wants what's best for the baby. Your sister was devastated after the ruling. Maybe you could compromise. Why are you shutting out family? That's not healthy for a child. It was like they turned the whole damn family tree into their personal PR campaign. I stopped answering. Blocked numbers, ignored Facebook messages, kept my head down. It hurt, yeah. Growing up, family was shoved down my throat as the ultimate bond, the thing you never turn your back on. But I realized something. Blood doesn't make someone safe. Love does. And my parents had proven over and over that they didn't love me the way parents should. Meanwhile, I focused on building a life. Jess became more than a friend. She became like an aunt to my son. She'd help with late-night runs to Walgreens when he spiked a fever. She'd sit with me at 2 a.m. when I was too wired from stress to sleep. She even taught me how to budget because I was clueless at first. Without her, I don't know if I would have made it through those months. The diner job wasn't glamorous, but I saved every penny I could. Eventually, I managed to move out of Jess's place into a tiny one-bedroom apartment of my own. Cracked walls, loud neighbors, heating that worked when it felt like it, but it was mine. Ours. I set up my son's crib by the window, taped his drawings on the fridge, and for the first time, it felt like a home. Of course, my parents couldn't stand it. They showed up unannounced one afternoon, pounding on the door so hard my son started crying. When I opened it, my mom pushed past me like she owned the place, looking around with this disgusted face. "This is where you live? This is what you think is good enough for a child," she sneered. I told her to get out. My dad barked, "Watch your tone. We're still your parents." And I'll never forget what I said back, "Then start acting like it." They left after that, but not before my mom muttered, "You're going to regret this." They didn't quit, though. Holidays became a nightmare. Family events were out of the question, because I wasn't about to let them parade my son around anymore. They spun the story to anyone who would listen, painting me as the bitter daughter, the ungrateful one, the liar who kept a child from his rightful family. For months, I couldn't go to the grocery store without running into someone giving me that judgy look, like I'd stolen something. But here's the thing. The more they tried to ruin me, the closer I got to my son. Because he didn't know any of that. He didn't care about court documents or family feuds. He cared about bedtime stories, about me clapping when he stacked blocks, about me kissing his scraped knee after he fell in the park. Every time I saw him smile at me, every time he reached for me first, I knew I was doing the right thing. Still, I'd be lying if I said it didn't wear me down. There were nights I sat on that crappy apartment floor, back against the wall, crying into my hands because the weight of it all felt impossible. Money was tight, my parents wouldn't let up, and I felt like I was always one bad break away from collapsing. Then something shifted. The diner owner, this grumpy guy named Carl who never smiled, called me into his office one night. I thought I was about to get fired. Instead, he told me he'd noticed how hard I worked, how I never complained, how I always picked up extra shifts. And then he offered me a manager position. More hours, better pay. I almost hugged him right there, grease-stained apron and all. That promotion meant I could finally afford daycare, which meant I didn't have to rely on Jess as roommate or beg for favors anymore. It also meant I had breathing room, money for emergencies, money to start thinking about the future instead of just surviving. And as for my parents, the more independent I got, the more desperate they seemed. My sister even showed up at the daycare once, trying to pick him up like she had any right. Thank God the staff knew better and called me immediately. I had to threaten legal action just to make her back off. It hit me then. They weren't going to stop. Ever. As long as they thought they had some kind of claim on him, they'd keep clawing at the edges of our lives. And if I wanted peace, real peace, I'd have to find a way to end it once and for all. I wish I could tell you that my parents and sister eventually gave up, that they came to their senses and backed off. But people like them don't quit. They only escalate. It all came to a head about a year after I won custody. My son was almost 2 then, running around, babbling in that toddler language only I could understand. He was obsessed with toy cars, lining them up on the rug and making little vroom sounds. It was one of those perfect Saturday mornings, sunlight streaming in, coffee in my hand, him giggling on the floor, and for once I felt normal. Like this was the life I was always supposed to have. Then came the knock at the door. Loud. Angry. I froze because I already knew who it was. When I opened it, there they were, my mom, my dad, and my sister, all 3 of them like some twisted army. My mom had that fake sweet smile plastered on, the one she used when she was about to do something ruthless. We just came to talk, she said, already stepping past me like it was her house. I blocked the doorway. No, you don't just get to show up here. My dad's face turned red immediately. You ungrateful little brat. After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us. I laughed. Actually laughed. Done for me? You stole my kid. You paraded him around like he wasn't mine. You dragged me into court trying to erase me from his life. What exactly do you think you did for me? My sister stepped forward, eyes glassy, voice all shaky like she was trying to play the victim. You don't understand, I love him too. He feels like my son. I can't just let go. Something inside me snapped then. For months, I'd bitten my tongue, tried to be civil, tried not to burn bridges. But hearing her say that, claiming my child like he was hers, was the last straw. He's not your son, I said, voice low but shaking. You didn't carry him. You didn't stay up all night when he was colicky. You didn't walk out with nothing to protect him. You don't get to claim him just because mom and dad decided you were their favorite. She flinched, but my mom jumped in before she could respond. You're selfish. That's what this is. You'd rather keep him in this dump, than let him have the life he deserves. She gestured around my apartment like it was some rat-infested hole. And maybe it wasn't fancy. Maybe the walls were cracked and the carpet was old. But it was ours. It was safe. It was filled with love, something their big, perfect house never had. So I told her, you don't get to talk about what he deserves. You had your chance to be a mother, and you failed. Now it's my turn. And you're not taking it from me. That shut her up for a second. But then my dad leaned in, his voice low and cold. We'll find a way. You can't keep him from us forever. And that was it. I realized nothing I said would ever change them. They weren't going to suddenly wake up one day and respect my boundaries. If I kept giving them openings, they'd keep charging in. I had to shut the door, literally and figuratively. So I looked each of them in the eye and said, this is the last time you ever come here. If you try to contact me, if you try to show up at his school, if you so much as breathe near him without my permission, I'll call the cops. I'll file restraining orders. I'll make sure you never get near him again. You want to test me? Go ahead. But this ends today. Then I slammed the door in their faces. I stood there, heart pounding, waiting for them to pound back or shout through the door. But they didn't. After a minute, I heard footsteps fading down the hall. And, just like that, they were gone. I slid down against the door, shaking so hard I could barely breathe. My son toddled over, plopped into my lap, and handed me one of his toy cars like it was his way of saying, "It's okay, Mom." I broke down right there, holding him tight, promising him out loud, "They'll never take you from me." Never. And I kept that promise. I filed no contact orders the next week. My lawyer helped me put everything in writing, clear boundaries, legal protections, everything airtight. It cost money I didn't really have, but the peace of mind was priceless. From that day forward, They never got near us again. Life wasn't magically easy after that. Money was still tight, work was still exhausting, and single parenting is no joke. But slowly, things got better. I saved enough to move us into a nicer place. My son started preschool and came home every day with messy art projects he'd shove into my hands with pride. I got promoted again at work. And somewhere along the way, I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something. The irony? All those years my parents called me weak, incapable of failure. I proved them wrong by doing the one thing they couldn't, loving without conditions. My son didn't care that our first apartment had peeling paint or that I worked late nights. He cared that I was there. That when he took his first steps, he walked toward me. That when he cried, I picked him up. That when he laughed, I laughed too. And he knows who his real mother is. That's all that matters. So if you're reading this and you've got people, even family, telling you that you're not enough, that you can't do it, that you should give up, don't listen. Because they're wrong. I know they're wrong. I lived it. The night I walked out of that house with my son strapped to my chest, I thought I was losing everything. But really, it was the night I started gaining everything that mattered. And every time my son looks at me with those big eyes and says, "Love you, Mom," I know I made the right choice.